Well, good morning and welcome to the next Menopause Morning. This is typically going to be every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I'm saying good morning to most and good afternoon to those in the East Coast zone. And what I want to always start with is just a recognition. 2 million, about 2 million women enter menopause every year. Out of those 2 million women, about 85% are dealing with anywhere from mild symptoms of menopause to significant debilitating symptoms of menopause. Yet the other 15% are having no symptoms whatsoever. Yeah, so really today's video, I want to get into understanding a little bit deeper as to why might you be in the 85% and not the 15%. Because the simple reality is from a menopause perspective, if your entire hormonal system is working properly as you move from what we would consider childbearing years into perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopausal, your body is already designed to maintain perfect hormone balance. Right, so yes, that means that even when your ovaries stop really producing the same level of progesterone and estrogen that they did in childbearing years, you still have the ability to maintain the progesterone and estrogen and testosterone that you need to feel balanced, to feel good, to really be symptom free. Short of, simple reality is there are two symptoms of menopause. Yeah, so first off, I'll say that what you've been probably told are symptoms of menopause, just a slide here, are that you should have hot flashes, you should gain weight, you should be dealing with sleeplessness, you should be fatigued, you should have mood swings, you should have brain fog, and the list goes on, right? Yeah, and those are the symptoms that the 85% will potentially feel when you enter perimenopause with a hormonal system that isn't working properly. You see, that's the caveat there. Now, there are two true symptoms of menopause. Number one, you would stop having a monthly cycle, and number two, you can no longer conceive. You see, I've been working with women with menopause for over 21 years now, and most of the women that I talk to, they're tickled to death about no longer conceiving and not having a monthly cycle. So it's something that would be most usually exciting for most women, except most women aren't the 15%. Obviously, most women are suffering on some level, and you could be too. Yeah. So what I want to help you understand today is why is the 85% such a problem, and really also what can you do to fix that. So if you don't have pen and paper, I would suspect I would suggest that you grab some, because you're probably going to want to take notes with this. And if you have any questions as we go through this, if you're watching live, by all means you could put a comment or a question in here for me to answer live. And also, if you're watching this as a replay, please, whether you're watching this on my personal Facebook page, my business Facebook page, my YouTube, or Instagram, by all means, if you have a question or a comment after watching this video, put that in there and I will address it for you personally. Now, the first thing to understand is that, again, why is it that, with the only true two symptoms of menopause, which is the 15%, are only like no longer having a monthly cycle and can't conceive. Well, what's driving the hot flashes? What's driving the weight gain? What's driving the brain fog, the sleeplessness, the fatigue, and so on, the mood swings, and the list goes on. Well, what's driving that is your overall system isn't working as you enter perimenopause. Yeah. So what the system is, and this is what you can write down for yourself. It's really how your brain, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your adrenal glands interact synergistically. Right. So, and why this is so important, because as you go from childbearing years into perimenopausal years, you're going to go into this, and your ovaries are going to stop their regular production of progesterone and estrogen over time. Yeah, but what the way your female body is already set up, and this is whether, like, if you believe in God or the universe or whatever your belief is in a higher power. A question I'll ask you, do you really think that whatever your higher power is had designed your female body to fall apart at like 50 years old? The answer is no. Your body's designed to go through this perfectly. Yeah, and why this works is because after your ovaries are stopping production and lowering production in perimenopause and stopping production in menopause, is at that point your adrenal glands should pick up the slack and produce the amount of progesterone and estrogen and testosterone that you need to still remain in complete balance and symptom free, short of no longer having a cycle or being able to conceive. And that's why your body doesn't need, at this point in your life, your body doesn't need as much of the progesterone and estrogen because you're not able to conceive. You're not going to have a monthly cycle. So you really need less production, and your adrenal glands are more than capable of maintaining that perfect production of hormones for you. Well, the problem though is that for most women, obviously 85% approximately, is by the time you enter perimenopause, the system where it's your brain, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your adrenals, and how they work synergistically together, they're not working. There's low vitality there. So what happens is that when your ovaries stop their usual production of estrogen and progesterone, the adrenals, which should be picking up the slack, they're depleted. And they're depleted for many levels, and I'll be getting into these different levels on upcoming menopause mornings. But they're depleted because number one, I think the one, and I'll get into this one reason right now because I think this is a big leading factor, is that a lot of times your adrenals and the system is depleted because as a woman, and you're honestly, I might be the only man you'll hear say this, is your life is a lot rougher and tougher and more stressful and more overwhelmed and more all of this than a typical man. And I recognize this by working with women for so long in my practice. I mean, I recognize that for most women, your major focus in your life is you're taking care of your children. You often take care of your husband or your significant other. You take care of your house. Very often you're involved in your church or community. And on top of that, you probably work a full-time job too. Yeah, so here's the simple fact is for the 30 years before you enter perimenopause, you spent those years overworked, overwhelmed, and overstressed. So is it a surprise that you enter perimenopause with adrenal glands that are lacking vitality, or maybe they're almost completely blown out? So when you're depending on the adrenals to produce the progesterone and estrogen and testosterone you need to maintain your perfect hormone balance, they're simply not working, right? And the problem with this is that a lot of times from a more conventional and even a lot of holistic care, when you enter menopause, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to recommend that you take progesterone and estrogen, maybe even testosterone on top of that, depending on what your testing is low. But the whole thing though is that can be a symptom care that can help with potentially symptoms of mood swings. It can help with the weight loss. It can help with what's going on with the brain fog. It can help with perhaps help with sleep and fatigue and mood swings and things like this. But that still isn't fixing the system. It's not fixing the problem, because the problem is that your adrenals and the system that really tie in with the adrenals synergistically, that's still not fixing that. And the problem with that is that when you're focusing on like HRT with hormone replacement therapy, while that could be symptom care, it could actually, well, the simple fact is the symptom care isn't fixing the system I'm talking about. It's not helping the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals reconnect and work together to naturally produce hormones anymore. And now, see, why this is a big deal, you might think that, well, I mean, symptom care sounds good to me. Well, of course, I mean, symptom care sounds good to everybody. Yet, what you don't recognize is that when this system I'm talking about that feeds into your adrenals, when that isn't working, it's also directly tying into so much more than just menopause symptoms. It ties into your thyroid function. It ties into the function of your pancreas. It ties into your metabolism of fats and protein, your ability to regulate body weight and fat properly, your mucosal lining, which is the first layer of defense of your immune system. It ties directly into every level of detoxification in your body. It ties directly into pro and anti-inflammatory states, immune regulation, ties into what's going on from a cellular energetic perspective. And literally, who doesn't want more energy nowadays, right? It also ties into your blood sugar balance, which is essential for your brain function. It ties into your musculoskeletal health. So this is bone and connective tissue turnover as well as muscular integrity. And it ties into your overall neural connectivity, which is your quality of sleep and mood, your ability to memorize and learn, and that neural connectivity, which is how your brain and your nervous system communicates every day, which is literally the master regulator regulator of everything. So the big key here to understand today is that when you actually have menopause symptoms, those are not symptoms of you entering menopause. Because remember, the 15% of the 2 million women who enter this every year don't have any of those symptoms. The only two symptoms they have is they're no longer having a monthly cycle and they can't conceive, and that's it. So when you're going into this as a part of the 85%, this isn't just a problem with menopause. This is a problem with your body on every level. Think about it. I mean, do you have a thyroid problem? Do you have a toxicity problem? Are you inflamed? So, like, do you feel a regular level of stiffness or aches and pains in your body? Do you feel that you can't build and maintain muscle mass like you used to? Do you have problems sleeping? Like all these different things that are going on. This is really tied into, again, the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenals, and that's what's keeping you from actually maintaining the perfect hormone balance with progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone that you're looking at to really go through menopause with ease. And that's what you should be doing. And the problem with this is that when we take this a little bit deeper, when you look at it a little bit more technically, you might want to take some notes on this as well, is when we think of this whole system I'm talking about, it all starts with a very simple B vitamin called vitamin B5, typically as pantothenic acid or panthenine. You see, your body takes that B5 and it converts it into a coenzyme. Right, then your body uses a combination of that coenzyme and your own production of cholesterol as the two most significant raw materials to make the very first hormone in your system, which is called pregnenolone. And you can think of pregnenolone as a mother hormone of every other hormone because hormones themselves aren't all made from raw material. The pregnenolone is produced from raw material, and every other hormone from there is a conversion. So there's two different ways that these hormones go, two different pathways. And one goes from pregnenolone to DHEA to andro to testosterone, and then finally to estrogens, and three different estrogens: E1, E2, and E3. And that pathway is all about your general health and balance, and obviously balance of your hormones. Now, the other pathway though is more of your fight or flight pathway, because that pathway goes from pregnenolone to progesterone and then cortisone, which is your body's natural anti-inflammatory, and then also cortisol, which is your body's most significant stress response hormone. So the problem with this is that what most women are using when they have menopause symptoms, they're using testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. Well, that's not fixing the beginning. That's not fixing the B5. That's not fixing the pregnenolone. That's not fixing the DHEA. Thus, it's leading to all the other problems that I had really mentioned. And so I really wanted to get this level of understanding and education out there for you, so you can really understand what's going on within your hormonal system that you're typically not told. You're typically told, again, oh, well, you're in menopause, you need to take, again, progesterone, estrogen, and maybe testosterone. But, simple reality, I've seen that be actually very challenging for a lot of women. Now, I've seen women who come into my practice after being on HRT, now living with a significant level of estrogen dominance, which is a significant risk factor for breast cancer, which I know you definitely want to avoid. And I've seen where, sometimes you're taking testosterone, but even your testosterone isn't going up, because a lot of times that testosterone is inappropriately converting into estrogen. And a lot of times I see then the progesterone go up very high, like exceedingly high, because your body's just trying to do something to remove the excess estrogen. And it's one of those things when I talk about women in my clinic, that have been using HRT, probably about a third of them, I see the HRT causing significant health risk and issues for them. For about a third, I see that it does help them with symptom care. And the other third, it seemingly does nothing much at all. And the kicker here is you can do something to fix this. You can test to see where the overall function is of this entire system I'm talking about. You can see how your brain, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals are working together. And you can get to the core of the triggers of what's causing this in the first place. Because what I want you to understand is your hormone system is not your hormones are not what's wrong. What's wrong is what's caused the hormonal system to be dysfunctional or imbalanced. And because your hormonal system just doesn't go awry in itself, something's got to trigger it. So I'm going to be getting into next week on the next Menopause Morning. I'm going to be getting into the different triggers that can actually be really leading to what's going on with your hormonal system. And I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of this. So number one, those triggers are number one, as I mentioned earlier in this video, the simple fact that your life has been probably difficult for the last 30 years. As a woman, your life is generally much more difficult than most men because for 30 years, you've been overworked and overwhelmed and overstressed. I'm not afraid to say that, as a man, because it's just a reality of what I've seen. The other triggers that could be going on, you could have infections in your gut that are driving an inflammatory response. Like anything that drives inflammation in your body is basically affecting your hormones. So the inflammation could be driven by infections in your gut, infections elsewhere in your body. You could have food sensitivities. A simple fact is 86% of the people who have a food sensitivity are asymptomatic. So it doesn't mean you eat the food and you feel terrible right after, but that food that you're eating that you're asymptomatic to, it's still driving an inflammatory response, which is kind of blowing out your hormonal system. You could be dealing with toxicity in your body. I see this all the time, whether it be environmental toxins, heavy metals, or chemical toxins. It could be challenges in your fundamentals of health, which is a very important key factor for everybody. And also one of the big triggers that I've been seeing more lately, and I will do a whole segment on this, is you could be, and I see it more often than not, you could also be dealing with high spike proteins in your body that's been probably hanging around since about 2020. And that's driving a lot of issues. So what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to get into I'm going to start getting into each of the triggers. So I'll not only get into the triggers, but I'm going to give you the keys that you could look for symptom wise or by reading your body to understand what triggers could be causing everything for you hormonally. And obviously eventually we'll get into how do you really fix this system? How do you fix the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenals? Because that's the key for you. And I've seen this all the time with women, and where and most women are shocked that, oh, you really, I could be postmenopausal, I could be going through all this and not suffer. Well, yes, if your body is working correctly, if the adrenals and the synergy of the whole system working collectively can actually function properly, absolutely you can go through menopause with only stopping your monthly cycle and no longer having being able to conceive. So next week, be sure to watch again. It's going to be on Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we'll be focusing on the beginning of the triggers. And what I'm doing every week, too, to really help you start this path is what you'll see by tomorrow, maybe later today, probably tomorrow. I'll have a link underneath this video. That'll be a link to a free book of my book that's called Fat, Fatigued, and Frustrated, which is an action step guide for all of your fundamentals of health. Because if you're going to work on overcoming your hormonal imbalance that's causing your menopause symptoms, you have to have strong fundamentals of health. So I'm going to offer that electronic version of that book for you for free. You just have to click on the link and follow the directions to get that book for you. So that's our menopause morning for Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. And I look forward to answering any questions that are in here after the live and that are underneath this video. And I also look forward to you getting your book coming up soon, The Fat, Fatigued, and Frustrated. And I look forward to next week beginning our discussions on the triggers that you're dealing with on a regular basis. I'll see you next week. Have a great week.